Hello again. Welcome to Colin and Adi's podcast, 50 Years of Modern Oil Trading. This is our episode number 6, recorded on 11th of December, 2025. And we've got a great pleasure to have Jorge Montepeque as our guest. Jorge is a bit of a legend in the market in terms of price
Thank you.
assessments and introducing lots of new things and making Brent work. Welcome, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Adi. What a great
Yeah,
introduction. I really appreciate that.
no worries. It's all deserved. What we are going to do, as usual, Jorge, is we'll just ask you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then as we go through your career, we may have a few questions about how the market evolved, and it's all yours now.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity because it provides like a marker where we can look back and forward. And when you're young, you tend to look forward continuously, right? And actually, you don't have any time to look back. As you get a little bit older, you realize that the time forward is getting reduced. You tend to look back, but there are still things that you can do and you want to do. So, one of the characteristics, I guess, of my personality is I like to do things. And within wanting to do things, there is a downside because I don't care what the damage is to myself. What is the cost in doing things? Because everything you do has a cost. And it's a cost that may be to yourself or to your family or to entities that you're doing things presumably for good reasons, but still there will be an impact on somebody. I think the younger you are, the more you do things just out of gut feeling. In my case, I wanted to do the right thing to ensure that the price is right, and I didn't think about the consequences all across to anyone, anybody, myself, my family. It's just about doing. As you get a little bit older, and I think they call this sophistication, you start thinking about what is the impact even on nations or on people or things across. And if you're made out of the right stuff, you still do what you have to do. You still have to do things for the right reasons, but you're more aware of the consequences. One of the things that happens as well is when you know about the consequences, then you can take some steps ahead of this. You can prepare yourself so it can be more effective. While when you're young, you're just a force going through because you're not aware. So in my case, I come from the third world, from very difficult circumstances as a child. And essentially everything I have, I owe to my mom. I would say 80, 90%. And the remaining 20% really to people that took great interest in helping me as a child and then mentoring me as a young adult. And even at this age, they still give me some good advice. But Jorge, I think you should do things this way or that way. Uh, One of the downsides I have is people accuse me of not listening very well. And I think that's fair comment, even though every once in a while I have the ability to reflect. And I am appreciative of this opportunity because I'm reflecting about all these things, right? But I don't advise this for anybody really, but I think not having anything as a child makes you very hungry to want to have an impact.
Right.
And as a child, I had the greatest respect, really, the greatest for creators. People that could do things out of nothing, even if it's a handicraft where they took thread or some reed or something from the ground and could create something. And I said, I am not a creator. And I had a respect for them. Then over the years, my push, I guess, was to create things. And But just creating things for the sake of creating is like, what is the point really, right? There needs to be an objective on what you're doing. And I liked economics very much. And then I like oil very much. And I would say that another great thing about life is some of us are very lucky because the mental difference between me and you guys, us three, versus no disrespect to anyone, but a street sweeper, a car mechanic, a brain surgeon, it's not that much. It's marginal difference. But some of us had the opportunity to go to schools, maybe good schools, or we studied hard and we compensated if the school wasn't very the top notch. And that enabled us to have that base. Education, I think, is so important and necessary. And young people should never forget that that's the base that make them able to go forward. The next thing is obviously stable family. And to this day, I don't know any family that is stable. It's just how we cope with those circumstances. But if we love the people around us, they will love us back, or the other way around. If they love us, we'll love them. And that's part of the stability, because then we can focus our energy into something else rather than putting out family messes continuously, right? And I think we know people like that. So it's the ability to do things, is the ability to focus. And you have to be almost like, I don't know, like pinhole focus into what you have to do. And I have this conversation with my wife very much, that in order to do things, you have to have a high dosage of OCD.
Can I
You
just
need to have some
clarify,
positive.
Jorge? Can I just clarify a little bit, just for the listeners? Obviously, Colin and I know have known you for decades. Um, you originally come from Guatemala. You worked, I understand, in the US in for PDVSA in New York,
Yes,
and that's your beginnings in the oil industry, right?
yes. So the beginning of me in the oil industry is really, I'm a child of the 70s when I came of age. And that was a period of great inflation. And I didn't understand what was happening. I could see it, but I didn't understand. Where I grew up, the currency was really silver based. And suddenly silver exploded in price and really disappeared from the currency. And then the price of oil went up, the price of transportation went up. And I could see that one of the biggest impacts was on the high cost of energy that just went up like crazy in the early 70s. And then as I became a little bit older and I moved to the US as your typical immigrant that somehow finds a way to get in, then I went to school there and I focused on economics. Again, like pinhole focus on economics. I didn't want to study anything else except economics, with the emphasis on energy. And then we had the second round in the late 70s during the Iran-Iraqi war, another bump in that inflation and the impact to the world because energy was scarce and expensive. And that propelled me to study further, and really was just a desire to understand. Had nothing to do with the desire to make money, to have a better house. It was just to understand what it was. And then I had the great opportunity to land into some very good jobs that gave me a further base. So I worked for Pyra. That was the first professional job I had. So I knew great people like John Lichtblau and Gary Ross. And they were really my mentors. They were really good in allowing me as a young, crazy guy to have some latitude to do things. I like to have space to do things my own way, and they gave me that opportunity. And then from then on, I move on to Petróleos de Venezuela, which is in the news as as we are speaking right now, because Trump is seizing their vessels, and we're calling Trump Pirate of the Caribbean, right? It's like, what other name can we give him but that? And so I learned the physical market. from the Venezuelans. And at that time, they were very wealthy. They were buying real estate everywhere in Florida, in New York. They were the richest, wealthiest Latin Americans, and even more so than the Americans. And look where they are right now. So the other thing you learn in life is cycles. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, and you just gotta roll with it because life is like that. So when I was there, the price of oil went from, say, $30, $40 to 5 to 10. So it collapsed. It just imploded. And that was another great lesson that things can go up by 200% and they can go down by 75% and destroy value, destroy jobs, destroy everything alongside with it. And it became very common at the time that there is nothing like high prices to cure high prices, because the high prices in the 70s, 80s incentivized the production in Alaska, in the North Slope, in the North Sea, and all of that extra supply then weighed on the market down. And then it got to $8, something like that. I mean, it's like really, really cheap, right? And thousands of jobs destroyed. And then the next iteration of the lesson is there's nothing like low prices to cure low prices because that creates demand and destroys supply. So you realize that life is just a cycle. But
This must have been about 1986 then, Jorge. I guess
yes,
at the time of the netback pricing, when oil went down to single figures temporarily, and everybody got a heck of a shock. And as you say, low prices are the best thing to end low prices. And at that point, of course, you said you were with PDVSA still.
yes,
The Brent market, with which you are so associated, was already going at that point, wasn't it? It started 2 or 3 or 4 years earlier. When did
yes.
you get from PDVSA and that part of your career to starting to get involved in the way in which Brent became the global benchmark
In 88, in
in 88?
1988. In 1988, I switched from uh, PDVSA to Platts. And again, I was very lucky. I had great bosses. I couldn't say that so much about the later ones, but the early ones were great. They gave me the latitude. To be fair, they were not market people. They were full on journalists. They were publishers. They were publishing in the oil space, but they were not oil experts in the manner somebody who works for Exxon or is an engineer would be. They were writers, but they had their heart in the right place. They wanted to do good. They wanted to report the market as it was. Maybe they were not sophisticated in terms of the systems. They didn't have the background. And that gave me a leg up in the process because I understood things a little bit deeper from a economics point of view, which was my forte, and from an experience point of view of having worked for a consultancy company and for an oil company. So when I got there, I had free range to do things, and I saw so many things that could be improved. And I think, and I work now with many young people. And a few minutes ago, I got a text from one of them about why are we doing things this way? It makes no sense. It's so complicated and inefficient. We should do it this other way, which is more efficient. And I'm all up for it, right? I love people that try to improve their environment, whether it's their family environment, country environment, or the work they work at, because it's about finding things that are not working well and how to make them better. And that was my drive when I was at Platts the early days. And I could realize that there were some people that have an ability to maneuver markets in a manner that was extremely advantageous to themselves. And there is a tendency in all the human beings to try to create conditions that they control. They're called monopolies, whatever, right? It's just they get a hold on something and they can name the price for that. But I was of the belief that the price of anything, and really of oil, because I had seen the impact on so many poor people, is about having the correct price. And frankly, and I became very militant, I would say, about that as the years went by. I didn't care whether the price was so low that destroyed the Middle East, so to speak, or destroyed Alaska, or destroyed the North Sea. I didn't care that the price was so high that it destroyed Guatemala or Zambia or whatever. The price had to be right in order to send the right signal. It wouldn't destroy the Middle East and it wouldn't destroy Zambia, to take the two examples, because if the price became too low, it would cure itself. And if it became too high, it again would cure itself. But for the medicine to have the right outcome, it needs to be the correct price.
Yeah. So you were an early proponent, I guess, listening to you, of oil price, Brent price, being the equivalent of a LIBOR, if you like, which at the
Yes.
time would have been much more visible to everyone and to economists and to the general public in a way that oil prices weren't. But what you say is you viewed early on that oil prices were as important, right?
Yes. He is the engine of the world, or it was at the time, because there were no alternative energies. And if you don't have energy, you cannot move. Your economy is paralyzed. But the price needs to be the correct one, the one generated by market forces. So I took it upon myself then to create systems, and I love the creation part with an objective, to create systems where the short and the long could come in and kind of fuse, bang, the matter and antimatter.
This started in Singapore, right, Jorge?
Well, I actually had the early stages of that in New York. I did a little bit of that in Dubai, in Oman, because at the time those prices were generated in New York time, in the middle of the night in the Middle East, and that made no sense to me. Was another thing that made no sense, right? Because it was so late in the day. But I started to, I don't want to use the term, I had to play with the systems to make sure that the two sides would come and collide and the number would come out. And I started to learn that it's a collision because people are fighting, right? It's two forces. And when two opposite forces meet, there's a little bit of an explosion. It's not a kiss, it's an explosion. And then I took those systems when I went to Singapore. And I think at the time you were there, Adi, I arrived in late 91. And then I started running with the system in 92. It's just, whoa, so many things to do here. And at that time, and I'm a great believer on luck, that you're in the right place. As I said before, it's not really your brain, it's the conditions around you help you. And at that time, we started to have the internet growing and messaging growing and all these utilities that one could use. They were very rudimentary, but they were great. And I took them on, right? So I started SMS.
Yahoo Messenger, right?
Correct. And so I started to play with how to enable the industry to communicate with each other. And we, but kind of like by hook or by crook, not the right term, I created Yahoo Messenger as the standard across the industry. Now I believe it's ICE Messenger or whatever it is called. So things evolve and change over time. And at some point, there'll be another one, right? But at that time, the world needed standards. And the world always needs standards. And if you listen to the market, even if they accuse you of not listening, but if you are actually listening, you can come up with the answer and they will adopt it. So we all use Yahoo Messenger, and that one of the reasons it got adopted, and I really liked it, was because it has the ability to count time through the seconds. There were all the systems that only counted time to the minutes, because this is like eons ago when the internet wasn't very powerful. And if you're counting things to minutes and not to seconds, you don't know who. A minute is a long period of time. And nowadays, with the new systems, it's to the millisecond and beyond, right? So it all needs to move on and become faster and tighter and clearer. And so we put those systems in place. So I forget what your my name on their Yahoo Messenger, I think, was Jorge Platz, something like that. And Adi, I don't know what name you had, but we all had like acronyms about
Yes, it was,
ourselves.
yeah, ADI1SG. Yeah, Singapore, ADI1 Singapore. Yeah. No, it was great. And then I guess you were moved. I'm just trying to put it within. I'm conscious of time, and there's so much we want to talk about. So you moved this whole idea. Eventually, you got into. Well, actually, let's just go one step back to Singapore. You created essentially this Platts window that became a funnel where you
Yes,
took bids and offers with timestamps, which is extremely
yes,
important, as you said. And then if there were deals, you would obviously use those deals to set the price. If there was no, you would kind of average bid and offer, conscious of the time when they were bid and offered,
yes.
right? And it started
So
working well.
it was two funnels, one funnel for the long and one for the short, for the sellers and the buyers, all
Right.
time stamp. And then the transactions would occur. And they would occur in an OTC, over the counter environment. Then it was clear that we needed to have an execution platform. And then we started to talk to various vendors and companies to do it. We talked to CME, to ICE, to Trade Capture, and various others. And over time, it was obvious that a company had the ability to focus more on how to create a solution. And at that time, this was very important, that didn't have latency in the communication. The fact that it could be transmitted instantly was very critical. And in those days, the internet was a little slow. So the company that had the ability to deliver the information between the short and the long faster and without drop-offs in the information was ICE. So we bolted them into the process. And if you really analyze what happened to them, they got billions out of that one, right? Because that enabled them to standardize and become the system du jour of the year, of the decade in the systems across. And we are still living from those concepts. So the concept actually comes in from economics. The price is set at the margin. The marginal barrel or ton sets the price. So what I did is to create an environment where that marginal unit could express itself. And it needed to express itself efficiently and with ample and wide communication with anyone that was qualified to trade. And then we have the systems, they still run. And I have great joy in working in trading offices and seeing that everybody's using my system, right? This is still right. They have no idea that I was the one that had to fiddle and determine how it would work. But it's a great thing, right? I get a chuckle out of that one. And
Absolutely.
I think the world is a better place
Mm.
because we created systems that reflect the price. And then we needed to make sure that the price wasn't just set with a few barrels, that they set with greater and greater volumes. So I created another system of incorporating barrels that were not of the same sulfur or gravity or qualities, and that they were still qualified for the pricing.
Just
And
for our listeners, Jorge, sorry, just for our listeners, because there are a lot of young listeners who probably don't even know, and we have listeners who follow other commodities. Basically, up until then, the way the system worked was that essentially Platts people would be journalists, not economists or mathematicians. They would call around people and say, look, let's talk about Brent, for example, because I would like to move on to Brent in a minute. Somebody we had in London, Beth Evans, she's still with S&P Global. She would call people around and say, are you offering a cargo of Brent? To say, yeah, this is the price, and I'm offering it plus 15. And then you go to somebody else and you think, okay, fine, she'll probably publish plus 10 premium. And then the next day you read Platts and it's like -5. We used to call it death by Beth. But anyway, she's a lovely person, but it's just that the event was
I,
named after her.
I am
But
glad you said it and not me.
well, it was just
Because
I said it was the event. She was a lovely person, and I've met her
that,
quite a few times
that was
afterwards.
not a nice moniker. And I work with
It
Beth.
was what it
Oh,
was. It was what it was. I'm just stating facts.
yeah.
And what happened
And
was then it was really good what you did. And now I would like you to move on to like moving back to London, because there was a bit of a. I think you told me before. I remember well when I was working on my first book. We had an interview, and you said you were just at the airport, but actually Brent was going bonkers. Do you remember that? You want to
I
take it from
remember
there?
that so well. And this is a
Okay.
very,
Let,
very
let's
mini
tell the
story.
listeners. Let's tell the listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. My boss at the time, Neil Fleming, said, Jorge, do you want to continue living in Singapore or do you want to do something bigger and have more of a wider footprint? And I was very comfortable in Singapore with my wife, my young kids, all of that. But then I said, okay, let me do it. And I know that's difficult on the family, but we moved. And we landed in London on a morning in February or January. Anyway, right in the winter, dark days, low sky, cold, and a mega Brent squeeze. and, and I'm landing, looking at my phone, talking to people already. You know, I was crazy at the time. I said, no, this has to stop. I'm going to come up with a system to ensure that these squeezes are a thing of the past because they were bad. They were really, really bad. And then I came out of the airport already clear-headed. This is the next objective I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fix data breadth. And I landed and I set out to do that. And boy, that was hard. Everybody was fighting to preserve the old system. And I, at some point, and I changed many systems at the time, I had a quiet word with somebody from British Airways because they had a lot of exposure to jet, and jet is a derivative of Brent. And he heard how people were fighting change. And he pulled me aside and said, Jorge, this reminds me of something in the book, The Prince by Machiavelli. And I have read the phrase inside, but it says, those, more or less, those who stand to lose will be very loud and will fight you back. And those for whom the change works will keep quiet. So, in other words, anytime you're trying to do something, you're only going to hear from the people that stand to lose. And they will fight you very hard, tooth and nail, all the way. While the ones for whom the new system is going to work, they're just going to sit back and let you do the battle for them, right? Because
And
why should they come up?
and your solution was to chuck more stuff into Brent.
Yes. And this is, again, an economic concept, or if you want to say a physics concept. And I use this image many times with the industry. If you have a pitch where you have, I don't know, 11 players against 11 players, and the ball they're playing with is this small, that ball is going to go all over the place. And it's going to be kicked out left and right, get out of the pitch. It won't be sensible. While if the ball is big and make bigger and make bigger, you cannot kick it that easily. It will start reflecting really the majority of the bank. And that was the idea, to incorporate Brent, Oseberg, Ecofisk, Fortis into this bigger ball of crude oil that we will still call Brent. And then people couldn't manipulate it. They couldn't really push it on because it's Friday, or because it's the day before a holiday, or because it's 2 days or the day of expiration, and I am in control of the market and I'm going to really push it to the gills, right? So that was the solution, and it worked beautifully. Of course, over time, those barrels again start declining. And then you need to make sure that you're adding compatible things, because you cannot add, say, lead with silver. It doesn't work. They kind of look the same. They both are heavy, but one is a heavy metal and the other one is a precious metal, right? So these things you need to think.
Oseberg with WTI would maybe be a kind of comparator there, no?
It's a hard one. And I can see why people wanted to do that. And I was keeping track about who was supporting it. And the people supporting it were the people that had operational and terminal facilities in the US, because it would work for them, right? And the people that were against it were the people that were more in the North Sea, because it would work for them. So very predictable behavior. However, one is in the US and one is in the North Sea. And then it has a third element, shipping. And shipping, as you know, right now is what, 400 times four times what it used to be. And that starts adding another element into the price, which is not the price of oil, it's the price of shipping. And once you add the price of shipping in, the outcome of the number is not pure anymore. It's not the price of oil. It's the price of oil plus an impact of freight. So I personally, and I have gone on record, it wasn't the right solution. Because
I would argue with you there very hard, but I don't want to, because this is not about me actually. The reason, let me just give you through the argument, because the end of the day, they are competing. WTI was competing even before the change with North Sea barrels, and it had to be delivered, had no choice. So he was competing at the, as you would say, the margin anyway. So
yes.
it just had to swallow that shipping cost one way or the other.
Yeah, this thing is no longer my responsibility. But people ask me, so I went on record about it, and I said the moment it gets bolted in, there'll be more volatility rather than less volatility. And the record stands for itself. The volatility went up on the differentials. I would have included grades closer to home to reduce the impact of shipping in the quotation. But that's not what is got done.
And Johan Sverdrup, for example.
Yes. I would have dealt with the quality differential more easily than with the shipping differential, which is far more volatile.
But
of the two, shipping is
was
more
my
volatile.
position, Jorge, during the discussions. I felt that Sverdrup would have been a preferable choice for the reasons that you suggest to WTI. However, I think such has been the success of WTI that I would change my view, and I think I was wrong to think of Sverdrup as the better option.
I think there's a problem with Sverdrup, and I think market. I was involved, and market was looking at it quite seriously, very seriously. The problem was simply Jorge monopoly power. They would just Statoil control the whole thing. They control Troll, they control Oseberg, Ekofisk, and you add Sverdrup. And you remember very well that in the old days, Statoil was a very active market maker or price maker. So I think that's what spooked a lot of the market at the time. But what I would like to do is just to go back. So you introduced in 2001 or two, it was Oseberg and Ekofisk, right?
Yes.
Later on, what was added was Forties as well, but it had to be escalated because of Buzzard, or de-escalated, right?
This goes back quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But in the first iteration, we did BFOE, and kind of like the names followed the history of what it was done. And very critically, one decision we made, or I made, was to keep calling it Brent, not BFOE, because all the contracts are evergreen, and for them to work and be respected in all the term sheets, you need to continue to use the same terminology. Otherwise, you start breaking contracts, and that's lawsuit forever, right? Lawsuit city. So
it's a great
we
brand
made
name
this.
as well, isn't it?
Yes. No, all the contracts use certain terminology, and if you don't respect that terminology, you cause contract breakage, and that's quite serious. So the industry accepted the terms. I mean, the little discussion we had here about the merits of one grade versus another is interesting, but it doesn't invalidate. In fact, it cements further that the concept is the one that lives on, which is the incorporation of other grades into the primary one, because whether it's this grade or that one is just a detail. The hard one was for the industry to accept that things were going to be inserted into the benchmark. And this is where we are in this process right now, and how things are going to change further as we go forward in time, right? Because the North Sea is dying. The North Sea production in Great Britain, it's dying. I mean, there's no other term to do that, to say that. Some of the refining is dying also because of a variety of reasons. I would call them politics, but it's reaction to the general public expectations. A lot of them love the environment, and there is a cost associated with that and an impact, right? So if you're willing to live with that and die by that, that's fair enough. It's expression of freedom of expression and the will of the voter. But as the North Sea dies, and it has great stress because Urals cannot play its role in the market, things will shift to other areas. So I am very keen, actually, on the Middle East, because hydrocarbon energy is still required. Maybe technology is going to change to a point where it won't, but where we are right now, it is required. And it's still growing year on year. I mean, today there is statements by IEA and by OPEC. One sees production growing by 1.4, another one by 835,000 barrels a day or so. Again, details, whether it's this number or that number, but both of them are saying demand is growing. That's the key one. Demand is growing, right? And that means hydrocarbons are required, and pricing of those hydrocarbons will remain critical. And where are those hydrocarbons more produced? US, Russia, Middle East, right? Not in that order, but those are the three big guys that count, and Europe has dropped off. And all the systems then over time will need to incorporate some kind of pricing of those three nodes, and maybe the two nodes are incorporated into one. In the past, Russia was incorporated into the Brent node, but right now they're fighting like crazy, right? And some new sanctions came out today against shipping companies and companies. So that node is incompatible at the time, but it's very compatible with the Middle East. And so at the moment, there are two nodes. And as you know, I'm still working with the same level of intensity on these benchmarks and issues. And I love to work and talk to the market on what are the next steps we need to do to bring up Dubai another step. So we publish numbers and we have systems, and the parent company can trade them and make markets on them. So you're welcome to use them. I don't hear you.
My fault, I muted myself. We are going that direction. We'll come to what you're doing now in a second. I just had a question that I really, really want to ask you today. Would you agree, and I wrote this in a couple of places before, this is my view as a sort of always more from the trading side of things. In the price assessment process, what tends to happen is that you have price makers and price takers.
Yes.
Price makers need to have some reason to make that price and provide that liquidity. And it's usually what we call pay to play. And some kind of rent seeking in that market. And then the price takers will accept that, provided they get a good, solid benchmark they can rely on, they can buy and sell oil and have liquid market in which they can hedge. And of course, what happens every now and then, that balance of power goes one way or the other, and that's when you get these squeezes and deformation in price, and that benchmark needs to change. And that's what you've been doing all your life. Would you roughly agree with that sort of view of the market?
Yeah, I think it is in the nature of human beings to push it to the extreme and see what happens. And if that extreme results in you being better off financially, of course you will do it. In that process, things can be broken and damage can be caused to others, and then the noise begins. So you always need people that are listening. How is the market behaving? Is there a lot of unhappiness here? How can we correct that and address those issues? So that has been one of my jobs. I'm not the only one. There are many others like that. And then some have better understanding or better systems, better backing, and then they can release these things onto the marketplace. But on that issue, I think in the Middle East, there will be a need for better benchmarks, more sophisticated systems. All of them age, all of the systems age. We age, so systems age. And we need to upgrade them and recognize where the volume and the demand is. One of the entities I haven't mentioned here is China. China is the buyer.
Well, talking of China, they've got the second biggest oil exchange in the world.
Yes.
Right.
And what is the impact of that number globally?
And also, by the way, of course. I mean, I would love, and I think we'll probably, Colin, well, I'm sure we'll agree that we'll have you at some stage again when we discuss some of these details, because, gosh, we've just done a sweeping sort of run through this. IFAD, DME, do you think they hold any water? Are they helping price assessments?
This is going to sound very harsh, but as you know, I'm not shy of making harsh statements. GME, formerly DME, as a price marker, seems to be on its last legs. One of the things that are very critical in a benchmark is the width of the bid offer. That shows you the health of a system. If in Brent the bid offer is 1 cent or 2 cents, you go, I can get in and out easily, no problem. The market is liquid. In Oman, some days it's dollars above. So if you have a system where it's dollars, then the system doesn't work, does it? You have to be very fair, right? You have to be very fact-driven. That system doesn't work. It's on its last legs. It should be put out of its misery.
IFAD?
IFAD has had its issues as well, right?
Yeah.
You raised the issue while having spoken about Equinor and JS.
Yeah.
So if you say that, then you have to say that about Merban and IFAD, right? If that is a concern. Or
and the refinery.
Correct.
And the trading team.
Yes. And this has happened this year, right? And Merban at some point was below the price of heavier grades, right? What happened? And then it jumped to the top. I have made that noise. I know that some people don't want to hear it when I say something about Merban and Operzakon inverting, but it is the reality. Somebody needs to say it. Don't blame the messenger. Don't do that. Listen to the messenger. And if he's incorrect, then correct him, right? But there is an issue in those exchanges. They need to be upgraded.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I just think we have enough time. I want to give you a chance. You're right now working for Onyx. Just to say a little bit to the listeners what you guys are up to and what you would like to do. You've only relatively recently started, so.
Well, as I talk to people outside in the market, I find all the time that they know Greg Newman, the CEO of Onyx, very well. I would say this, not because he's my boss, it's the reality. He's a master in media. He's a very hungry guy. He wants to change the world. He truly, when people say, I want to democratize trading, he really does. And he really wants to make sure that the expenses associated with trading are reduced to a bare bone, where the key to make money is liquidity, not the fact that you can extract so much out of something. So he's against monopolies, all of this. That is what he does. So I work for him, I work within the company, and I work in the publishing side. And I can honestly tell you 100%, it's the freest environment in which I have worked. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, what is the corporation going to think or tell me or ask me to explain about something I wrote? Never. I write essentially what I self-decide and self-edit, not what some chief editor or some other person or Greg tells me you shouldn't have written that. So it's great to work in a place with full editorial freedom because you need the room to be able to do things.
But as you said early on, I'm just, if you may hint, you were talking about potential benchmarks changing. Do you have any ideas? And will you be doing it within the framework of Onyx?
Well, we're trying, and we are grown-ups. These things are not easy.
Of course.
And maybe they will never work, but you have to give it a shot, right? If there is a market need, that market need will get satisfied. So what we have determined right now is the cost of using benchmarks is extremely high. We have the capability, the record is there, to generate those values, those benchmarks at low cost. You want to subscribe to our systems? $2,000 a year. If you're a trading company, it's nothing, really. So you have the alternatives there, and we have the creativity and the expertise, which is probably more important than the creativity, in amending those systems to the market requirements. So if the industry wants to give us a chance, we're there.
Very interesting. Just one last question from me, actually, Jorge, because I know you relocated, didn't you, to Dubai?
Yes.
I'm sure you're very happy sitting out there in the sunshine, enjoying everything. The world of oil trading has kind of moved a little bit that way, hasn't it, in the course of the last couple of years? How deep are the roots, do you think? Is this something that's solely because of the way in which Russian material is being traded, or is it something with more of a longevity, do you think? Is Dubai going to become, I suppose, a new Singapore?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and one needs to be very metric about these things. The Middle East has had an aura of not being quite okay, of maybe something happening with labor or this or that, right? Or they don't treat people well, or you cannot really do what you need to do market-wise. I am here. I'm expressing myself very openly. People can trade. And there is a desire here to make things work quickly. I was talking to people over the weekend. If a road is needed, it gets built. If new housing is needed, it gets built in a hurry. If you need to work at night, you work at night. I can open the window and you'll hear the noise of the machines, and nobody complains because everybody's trying to move ahead. So tons of companies come here to establish their headquarters and work. And tons of people come in here because they pay no income tax. I mean, you earn your money, you keep it. I mean, that's a great thing. It's a great attractiveness to be here. So tons and tons of people are coming in. And it's the kind of people that are creators, experts, and also wealthy people that have the ability to make things happen. So this place is on a tear. It's just growth, 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 growth. And more companies are moving in, establishing headquarters here, trading, and of course, they take advantage of Indian opportunities, Russian opportunities, fuel oil opportunities, because they're here to make money. This is pure capitalism, the thing that made the West great until socialism came in, right?
Jorge, we are well out of time, but that was worth it, every minute of it. on behalf of Colin and myself, it's been great privilege. And thank you very much for coming here. I have no doubt that we'll probably pick up this conversation on some particular topic sometimes in future. Regarding your boss, Greg, I mean, he will have, I know Colin, right? He'll definitely be here and have a chance to say a few words himself as well.
Yep.
So once again, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
all the best.
I really appreciate the opportunity, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you, Jorge. That was fabulous. Thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon.